point. So I may be wrong in that respect, and Commissioner Miller can certainly correct me, but I don't believe technically we are seeking or require a rear yard setback. It refers to the western side yard setback, the portion of the ordinance that calls for both setbacks since one affects the other, building coverage, and again, parking. The western side yard setback variance requirement is for approximately 7 feet. As the new buildings or proposed new buildings' western edge will taper slightly from the rear, which maintains the required 15-foot side yard setback, but tapers down from the rear of the property to the front facing Eastern Ave to about about an 8-yard setback from property line to building structure. Building coverage, the existing building has 53.8% lot coverage. As I said, it is pre-existing, non-conforming with respect to a number of dimensional controls, that being one of them. The proposed new building would increase that violation of zoning and would result in a 59.4% total building coverage of the lot, whereas under zoning, 50% is the maximum. So this applicant does need the variance for that. I would point out to the board, however, that under zoning and in an industrial 1 district, which is where this property and proposed new structure are located, you're allowed up to 50% primary building coverage, and also potentially, if an accessory building is involved, an additional 20%, suggesting you can cover between 2 structures up to 70% of the lot. In this instance, there will only, of course, be 1 structure. However, given that an accessory building would provide for another 20%, the 59% being sought, for which relief is needed, keeps this building below the total amount of lot coverage that would be otherwise available under existing zoning. The parking variance is significant, at least when viewed in a vacuum. Zoning requires for storage facilities currently 1 space per 1,000 square feet of interior space in the structure, whereas there is just about 90,000 square feet proposed in this new structure. That would suggest the need for 90 parking spaces under zoning. You can see from the plans that were submitted with the building, there are 12 exterior parking spaces located on site, and there are two distinct loading bays, each of which can accommodate 2 vehicles at a time. So you don't see those depicted on the plan per se as parking, but as a practical matter, they constitute another 4 available parking spaces, and quite frankly, the ones that are most likely to be used most often by people using the storage facility, because that's where you load and unload your vehicle for purposes of taking your belongings to your storage unit. With respect to the legal elements called for in a variance petition, I'd respectfully suggest to the board that they are met here. With respect to the uniqueness of the lot, either its shape, soil condition, or topography, there are a few factors that render this lot unique. First of all, this lot does have a tapering grade. You can see on the plan that there is currently a retaining wall at the rear, the northern edge of the property. That's because the property line, the property drops significantly in the rear. That retaining wall is located on site, so a portion of the rear of the property is significantly higher than the remainder of the property. It also slopes down to a modest degree north to south, back to front, railroad to Eastern Ave. And although the property appears to be a conventional rectangle, it is in fact somewhat skewed. It is somewhat oddly shaped, more trapezoidal. When looking at the site plan, the building as depicted, or proposed structure as depicted on the site plan, is true in terms of north, south, east, west. However, the lot is not true in terms of north, south, east, west, which is why the building appears to be somewhat skewed on the lot, but in fact the building isn't skewed, it's the lot itself. I'd also suggest to the board that The fact that this property abuts the rail line also renders it somewhat unique. Direct contiguity to a rail line is not something that is typical within the zoning district or for most properties within the zoning district. The hardship factor, I'd suggest, is met here as well. The building, as a practical matter, and in consideration also of the other similar businesses and structures located within the city, and as it happens, located also on Eastern Avenue in the same Industrial 1 zoning corridor, this building needs to be the size and shape it is in order to make this an economically viable project for the petitioner, and also to be competitive with literally multiple direct competitors who are located less than a mile. There are currently currently are 3 other storage facilities on Eastern Ave, one at the old Continental Can Company, one at the old Boston Steel and Manufacturing Company, and one down at the old Revere Knitting Mills building. All of these are essentially within a mile or less of the location of this proposed structure. And with respect to the third component of a legal analysis, that being that this not substantially derogate from the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance, I suggest that these dimensional control variations being sought, those of the side yard setback and the building coverage, are quite frankly de minimis as a practical matter. We do recognize that the parking variance being sought could not ever be characterized as de minimis, given that zoning technically calls for 90 parking spaces, and this proposal only provides 12 or 16 if you include the 4 that are available within the actual loading bays. However, and this particular issue will be dealt with in more detail by one of the members of the team who's involved with the engineering and the parking analysis that was presented to you. I would simply say that with respect to that, although it is in a vacuum appears to be an egregious variance, a 90% deficiency in parking, that as a practical matter, the parking that is provided is eminently adequate for this use at this location, and we'll be using, for purposes of persuading the board on that, information and analysis that's been conducted both on a generic level with respect to how much parking is utilized and needed for storage facilities in general, but also with respect to those other individual businesses that currently exist and operate on Eastern Ave. All of them have been approved, not by this entity. My belief is that all 3 of those all 3 of those variations or variances in parking were done pursuant to the special permit process before the planning board. But nonetheless, each and every one of them has significantly less parking than would be technically called for under the zoning ordinance. Those facilities, 2 of those facilities are larger than the one that's being proposed right now, but have similar deficiencies in terms of parking. And I can also suggest to the board that the lack of 90 or 100 or 110 parking spaces at any of those facilities has never created a problem, to my knowledge, or in my belief, to the city's knowledge regarding parking or traffic in any means. That a modest number of parking spaces is more than adequate for a storage facility, given the nature of the business and the way it's used by those who rent spaces there. With that in mind, I'd like to ask a couple of team members from VHB who have more detailed information regarding the technicalities of the dimensional control variance request as well as the parking variance request to go over them with the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Karen Staffier. I'm with Vanessa Hanger Bruslin, VHB, located at 101 Walnut Street in Watertown, Mass. I'm a site civil engineer, registered professional engineer. And I can just take a moment, I think, many of the details were very well covered, but I can simply walk you through on the plan and present kind of what was just described in words in a little bit more detail on the plan view. Now, in the package that you have, I'm just gonna pull this one up. Is that okay? You can see the existing building here. There's the frontage along Eastern Ave. North is up. You can see the railroad right-of-way is at the top of the page. The existing industrial property to the west and the retail parcel to the east, they're not pictured. You can see those on this aerial here to the left. The existing building, as was previously mentioned is just over 48,000 square feet. It's currently non-conforming dimensionally. It has a encroachment in the rear yard over the property line. It has less than 3 feet of setback on the western property line, and it's only 2.5 or so feet setback from the front. As you can see when you go out there, there's very little green space, and it's predominantly paved. So in the proposed condition, it's over here. The peach shape that you see here is the proposed building, which was mentioned, 4-story, 89,690 square foot building, accessed from a curb cut here on Eastern Ave with the 11 parking spaces that were mentioned. This corner here in the building is the office area that was mentioned, and you can see the 2 loading areas. These are kind of covered loading areas where people who are unloading and loading their stuff. I know I had a friend who moved about a week and a half ago in that torrential Friday storm, and was really grateful that the facility that she rented had a couple of loading areas like this. So I think it's a great asset to the use. So this is the parking lot, and then you can see that skew that was mentioned. The parcel boundary is shown in that green shade, which is open space that will be created once the building that exists today is removed and the new building, should it be allowed, is built. We have a 5-foot setback on the rear, which I understand because we're abutting the railroad, the actual requirement is 0, so we're providing some space there that wouldn't strictly be required. We have an 8.1 foot setback here on the west edge between the corner here, but it gets steadily larger as you traverse the site going towards the north. So this setback here is one of the setbacks that has the dimensional variation request. And then, let me just check my notes here. We do meet the front yard setback is 10 feet, and we have 12 feet provided along here. Just make sure I've got everything. I think that covers
Can I
all.
ask you just to walk us through, just while you're on that?
Of course.
What are the rear, is it just the west side that you're asking for a setback, or is it on both sides?
That's correct. It's just the west side. If you look very closely at the plan in front of you, we do show the setback lines in this required setback lines in a dashed line. And so we only really cross over it with a small sliver here, but we meet the setback, the 15-yard setback on the right or the east side of the parcel.
If I may interject, Member Sherwin. Yes, technically, we're only asking for a variance on the western setback from building to property line, but under the ordinance, each side must be a certain amount, and then both sides must total the amount. So we don't have enough to meet the both sides requirements. So technically, we need a variance on that aspect of the ordinance that calls for a variance on that side, and we also need a variance that of that aspect of the ordinance that calls that both sides be a minimum of 30 feet in this instance. So the building as depicted is only going to be short of the required 15 feet on one side, but because it's going to be 7 feet short on one side and 15 on the other, when you combine those, you get 22 feet when you're supposed to have 30 for both sides. So we technically need a variance for both sides of the building. But the structure as proposed will not be in violation on the easternmost side of the building because we have 15 feet running the entire length of the building. I don't know if that helps or not, it's a little bit confusing, but that's the reason why the notice references both sides setback, is because under the ordinance, the combined setback on both sides must be a minimum of 30 feet, and we can't do that because we only have 7 feet on one side, basically.
Thank you for clarifying that. Difference between each side and both sides. Were there any other questions? Can turn it over to Matt, who can review parking if there are no other questions.
I just have one. So it really, on the left side, doesn't hit the 15 feet until the rear of the building, right? Thanks for pointing out that line, but that was
Yep.
one of my questions. So it's really the back corner is where it hits 15.
Essentially.
Okay.
It's within the thickness of the line on the plan, so.
Okay.
Within a foot or so.
Yeah, okay.
I guess I'll turn it over to my colleague who can discuss the parking study.
Thanks, Karen. Good evening. My name is Matt Keeley. I'm a traffic engineer with VHB. Attorney McDonald gave a thorough summary. I just want to go into a little bit more detail on some of the key points that are in the June 1st traffic memo, two of which are related to vehicle trip generation, and the third is related to parking. So when I talk about vehicle trip generation, the standard methodology for that is to use the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, which is essentially a national database of traffic counts for all different kinds of land uses. And in our case, self-storage is one of those land uses that are in the manual. So our trip generation projections are based on ITE trip generation manual. So two of the comparisons I wanted to make were to the previous use as a manufacturing use, or if somebody wanted to reoccupy the space as a manufacturing use. So if you look at table 1 in the traffic memo, you would see that our projections show that the proposed project would generate 18 vehicle trips, 9 entering and 9 exiting during the weekday morning peak hour, and the same 9 entering and 9 exiting during the weekday evening peak hour. What's also shown in that table is that the previous use or another manufacturing use that could reoccupy the site would generate almost double, or a little bit more than double, what we're projecting for the self-storage use. Another comparison we like to make sometimes with these types of projects is to collect local data, because the ITE manual is a national database. Sometimes things are a little bit different regionally. So it's always a good check to see if a particular use may generate at a different rate in a certain region. Because we do have a few storage facilities nearby, we did some traffic counts at 490 Eastern Avenue and 650 Eastern Avenue, both of which are larger than the proposed project, and they are currently generating significantly lower traffic than the ITE projections. Table 2 from the memo shows that 490 Eastern Avenue is generating 5 trips during the AM and 11 trips during the PM. And 650 Eastern Avenue is generating 9 trips in the AM and 6 trips during the PM. So less than half of what ITE.
Is that 9 or 4?
Which one?
For 650 weekday morning, it says 2 and 2.
Yep, that should be 4.
Okay.
That's a good catch. Thank you. So again, significantly less than the ITE projections for our project. In addition to the traffic counts we conducted at those two facilities, we actually conducted parking occupancy as well and documented the peak parking demand at each of those facilities during the morning and evening peak hours. At 490 Eastern Avenue, there was a peak of 5 parked vehicles and 8 vehicles in the evening. And at 650 Eastern Avenue, there was 2 in the morning and 4 in the evening. And again, those facilities are larger than the one we're proposing, and we are proposing 15 spaces to serve the site. So just based on the trip generation projections and the parking counts and the local traffic counts, I think we're showing that we're not going to be expecting a significant vehicular impact, and we're showing that the proposed parking should be more than adequate to accommodate the demand.
When were the counts done?
Those were done in May of '21.
The traffic counts are still down, right, in general?
Generally speaking, commuting traffic has been on the way back, yes.
Observation?
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. It's a fair point, and it's not like I'm totally trying to correlate, those numbers to ours. I'm just putting them in perspective for comparison purposes.
Anybody else have any questions? David? What number does it say on your, oh, I think you're on.
No, I'm not on. Oh, now I am, okay. Now, I walked around the property today. Obviously, I couldn't get in to all the sides because it was fenced off, but I did walk around to the Northern Strand Community Trail side. Is there gonna be any kind of access from the trail to get to the proposed structure? So like if I was coming from the trail, and I wanted to utilize the storage unit, could I either enter from the trail side, or is there any kind of an access where I could walk from the trail down to Eastern and then up into the main entrance? So my question is, like, if you're on the trail, if you're coming from east to west or west to east, do you have to walk all the way down to the next, parallel cross street, which I forget the name of, but to go walk all the way back to Easton? So if I'm coming by bike, scooter, walking, is there any way to access it from the backside?
As currently proposed, the project doesn't envision access from the trail. There would be fencing separating the parcel from the trail. As a general rule, I don't think many, if any, people utilize storage facilities, by arriving by bike or on foot. Typically, they're there to load or unload goods or belongings that are stored and utilize motor vehicles for that purpose. But no, as I said, as currently envisioned, we don't anticipate any access or openings in the fence. And if someone did want to do that, they would probably need to go down to Maplewood Street. That would be the closest cross street, and walk around to get to it. But we also wouldn't envision that as being a particular problem, because as I said, most access to storage facilities is by people utilizing motor vehicles for the purpose of transporting goods back and forth. With that said, and I'm going to bring up a representative of the petitioner momentarily, it could be something that possibly could be done, but it's, as I said, presently not something that was anticipated.
And would he know about the,
Oh, let me turn
I'm
around.
technically challenged.
We're all getting used to it. You're on now.
Okay. If the, someone that knows the interior of the building a little bit,
I'm sorry?
someone that is aware of how the interior is going to be structured?
Oh, yeah, this
He's the
individual.
man?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
So, let me bring him up, a representative of the
I
petitioner.
have one quick question before I forget. So it looks like there's trees behind the building right now.
Yes,
So there's the bike path, and then I don't know if those trees are staying there or not.
I don't know if they're actually located on the land that comprises the parcel.
Okay. So then between the trees and the back of the building, which is basically gonna be a 4-story wall, what will be back there for lighting or security or?
Well, the site itself is expected to be very well lighted. They like light, as was mentioned to me in our pre-hearing meeting. They love their property to be bright, well lit. We anticipated that either before the board or if we are successful here and move on to the next level, which is the planning board, I know personally the planning board, anytime matters are before it with properties that abut the bike path, they're interested in lighting, they're interested in video surveillance for safety purposes. These are all things that we've contemplated. They're all things that are willing to be done by the petitioner, whether that's in the form of a special condition that might be imposed by this body, or perhaps, again, if successful, before the planning board. We expect something to be asked for or required relative to security and lighting for the bike path at the rear of the building. So, but I'll let the representative of the company address that more specifically for you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Board, thanks for accommodating us this evening. My name is Pete Williams. I'm the president and founder of Premier Storage Investors, the applicant here. Our business mandate and plan is really quite simple. It's to go to the top 20, 30 MSAs in the U.S. and find markets that have the need for self-storage. And Malden and this site that we've identified here is one. Generally speaking, as measurements go for the need of our product throughout the country, actually Malden is about 30% underserved for our product type. The result of that is extremely high occupancies and extremely high prices. And we look to enter markets such as your neighborhood and fill a need for space and accommodate your constituents. With regard to the parking that was being discussed in that variance, I mean, generally speaking, I can tell you I wouldn't be looking to make this type of investment without ample parking. That's a very general statement that I can do. Come December, I've been doing this for 32 years with over 400 projects either acquired or developed in 35 states throughout the country. And the last thing I would ever want to do is make an investment that didn't satisfy the needs for parking and use and certainly be available and wasn't needed in any market. So I guess that being said, I'm available for any questions. I know there's been a couple already, but hopefully I can help.
Did you have a question, Sean?
Am I still on?
Yes, you are.
I don't want to
You're live.
ruin the movie. Who are you marketing to? I mean, what type of customers are they? I mean, is
Well-
households, businesses?
I would say in general, users are 80% or so, depending on different markets, household, personal use, between 10 and 20% business use. I mean, self-storage, really is driven by, they call it the 4 Ds, death, dislocation, divorce, and displacement. I mean, really, some of our managers end up being psychologists some days because a lot of people come to us. It's not a good day, candidly, when a lot of our customers come to us. So, this really with the mobility of the U.S., people liking their stuff, those 4 Ds that I speak of are really the drivers of use in our product.
What size are the units inside? I mean, I'm sure they vary, but I mean,
They do vary, but typically the smallest 5 by 5, the largest 10 by 30. Over the years, you learn the art of providing a unit mix that's correct for a given market. As you can imagine, you get out into suburbia, people spread out more. They generally rent more space, but it may be a little less expensive, and you get into more urban, more dense areas, and people tend to rent smaller spaces and be used to living in smaller spaces. They also live in smaller spaces. They apartment dwellers and the like in real dense markets, and you get out and you have big houses, and the storage kind of goes with that. The size that people use and how they store really tacks along with it.
okay, good. I don't like granting variances, so that's why I ask about these things. And I know this is probably sized optimally for you, for your return on your investment. But I want to make sure that, it's not anything that's going to be too large for that area. I think I've driven by those, I travel in the city quite a bit, so I go by the self-storage places you see, and you mention in here, and I don't really see that the parking's a real issue, but, covering up a lot that much is a bit of a, an issue in a city. And it's, some of what, when the city's been talking about, they had residents in the city talking about what concerns them, and one of the things is density seemed to be one of the things that kept coming up back and forth, so, that's the only kind of issue I have. I can see that you're doing, the best you feel you can do in giving some green space, but with, making it any, and if you've got a mix of sizes, is there any way that you could make it smaller? Not a lot, but I mean, something to give the city, a little more space around it. I'm just not sure. Especially at the back, say, but I don't know. Again, I don't know the art.
Talking about the length of the wall at the back, or?
Yeah, well, or even just, how way you could do it. I mean, so if there's more space between you and the bike path to get,
I think, my direction was, we don't really have a setback in the back,
Right.
so I guess technically we could build up to the property line, and it was actually me saying, hey, these guys have this nice bike path back there, let's give some buffer here and some setback here, and obviously we've got the slanted line there that we start out on the setback and the rear, and as it comes forward, because the property line comes this way with the plumb of the building, kind of crosses, I felt like I was doing that whenever we laid it out. Obviously, maybe you don't agree, I did think about that. Is basically what I'm trying to say.
I like to see what went into it and what you're feeling on it. But I mean, it's just, I know that the people concerned sometimes about, buildings if they're too big for the site. That's all. And yeah, I didn't mind, like I say, the parking, but I don't know if any part of it you could move around to give them.
And I understand, and as a matter of fact, I could tell you this, and I could offer, we're actually doing something really similar in Nashville, Tennessee, where we're backing up against what they've created out of an old railroad walk path, and we have worked with them, and we're actually give a whole spot, and we'll pay for and put a mural that fits with the community. And, we've done that. I guess.
One of your competitors here just did that.
Oh, well, that's good. I think it's good for the community. Look, I've never, in all these years, in 32, I've never done a project and had somebody at the end of the day. At this point, I've had a lot of people go, oh, that's not going to be good. But after I'm there and I'm their neighbor, I've never had anybody that wasn't happy that we're their neighbor, and that's our approach. And in the design and layout, we certainly always work with those teams and planning, et cetera, and come up with a solution that is good for the community and the neighborhood. We're here, we're making a big investment, and we want to do that. We want to be those people.
Okay. All right, that's it.
Nelson, did you want to speak to the rear setback? Just to clear that up.
Yeah, sure, so you don't address anything you don't need to. Attorney McDonald was correct in both of his explanations, as he usually is. The rear yard setback, there is no violation of that. With the zoning does not require a setback along any property that touches the railroad property. And also his explanation of the combined side yard setbacks was also accurate. There's three different numbers. There's one for the left, there's one for the right, and there's one for the two numbers combined. So they're three distinct things that you could be in compliance with all three, or in violation of one, or two, or three, so.
Thank you.
That's correct. And that was obviously a processing mistake on my part, because Kathy's never wrong, so.
Hey, Nelson, while you're up here, can you talk about the parking? Is Attorney McDonald correct that they would normally need about 90 spaces otherwise for this
I'm
project?
sorry, I didn't get the first part of the question.
My question was about the parking. Is he correct about what would otherwise be required for parking in this
Through
site?
the zoning?
Yeah,
Yes, he's correct. Through the numbers that are established in our zoning, the required parking spaces go by the square footage of the use.
okay.
So, so with the building of that size, you know, it's gonna convert into a large number of parking spaces. The ITE, tables that were referenced by the engineers here tonight, those are actually the tables that the planning board uses for their evaluation of, traffic studies. So that is something that's not, foreign to the city.
I saw it, you were blinking.
We had one more question. Let me. It must be 4.
Hi. I'm an architect, so I'm not too familiar with parking and parking lot requirements, but it seems like you have a very wide space between the parking spaces. I'm curious, is that for trucks to pull in and pull out, so you need more than 24 feet?
Yeah, yes, and to that point, parking is really not even the issue with self-storage. Whenever, if you're an owner, you want to give the customer area to maneuver. So the area in that courtyard there is, when people come to rent, they'll park for 5 minutes. And then that's the only time they ever park. The rest of the time, they're in active use of loading and unloading. So you want to give them room to come in and maneuver, be able to pull up and then back into these loading areas here, and really maneuver. So, you know, the lines are something that very rarely get used for somebody coming to like go, I'm gonna park for 30 minutes. You know, most people are parking for 10, and then they're going to these two places, you know, 99.9% of the time they come to the property. They're getting into those loading and unloading areas, and all of the space is accessed from the interior of the building.
Okay, I'm asking because I'm just wondering if you really need 52 feet, if you could take 7 feet away and still make that parking lot work, or if it really needs to take 7 feet away from that side yard setback. So I imagine if you studied the overall width of the parking lot and determined it had to be 18 times 2 plus 52.
Yeah, you know, yeah, I like to at least have 50 feet for somebody to be able to, you know, come in. Really about the largest truck that will come into us is like a 28-foot U-Haul. And even that's not that frequent, but for that vehicle to be able to come in and do a motion like this and go back into one of those, I like to, you know, have that for the customer. It's optimal for the customer, put it that way. And in my mind, that's the only person I'm building this thing for, is the guy that wants to use it or the gal that is coming to use this property. So that's what I'm always thinking about when I'm laying these things out. I think that's maybe the best answer I could give.
And I'm not positive if I know the answer to this, but can parking lots be over that side yard setback? Yes, so I guess I'm just a little bit worried about the side yard setback variance and curious if you could move that parking lot over, 3 feet and take 2 feet away from that middle area. So that'd be 50 feet instead of 52 and almost make it work, or if there's other hardships.
Can I show,
Yeah.
move this?
Yep, if you can move that parking lot line, towards the transformer, which I'm guessing is just like a placeholder.
Okay.
So if the parking went up to the side yard setback or just beyond it.
And then what does that do? I guess
Yep,
right here is where we need the variance.
yep, I'm wondering,
And then do the build, well,
Yeah.
then that takes this corner over here.
no, in my head, the scenario would be that you'd lose very minimal square feet of the building if you could shift that front massing over to clear the setback. So I just want to make sure that the parking lot is as small as you need it to be, and that it could be up against the property or the setback if it needed to be, in order to give a little more space at that
I mean,
side yard.
yeah, I mean, I guess I could, I mean, I guess I could even, jog this in and, change
Yep.
the wall.
Yeah, I know corners cost money, but if you could jog that in and then maybe not need that variance, that would be 2 variances that you don't need.
I could do that. I mean, but I don't think, the parking lot can,
So this line
the parking lot can stay where it is,
This
right?
becomes 50.
You're saying just bring this in. Maybe come here, come in here, and then take this out a little bit.
Yeah, but this can go over that line.
We could do that.
Just 2 less variances.
I could do that, and I could show.
I'm up here so
I
I
mean,
can see a little better.
I'm trying to, I think we're talking about,
Right.
maybe bringing this thing, putting this on this line,
That- what
talking
was-
about adding
7
some
feet?
building right here, which makes this shorter.
You can also shift that parking lot closer to the,
I could
believe
shift
that
that
can-
over there.
can that go right up to the line?
Can I?
Do you need a setback on a parking lot?
They're gonna put the transformer here anyway, because you have to get a truck to it. So if they put it here, then they're gonna need like truck access.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, just trying, we all like green space.
I'm trying to keep my, we build on, because of the unit size that you mentioned, we build on a 5x5 grid, so, I gotta stay on the 10-foot. So I try to do that. And we could shave that, we could start, yeah.
Trouble with pushing.
We can push the parking lot this direction, so we keep the room.
You can from
And then-
a setback standpoint, but we do need to be mindful that we provide the snow storage requirements.
Say that again.
Snow storage requirements, in
Okay,
that area.
well,
Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah, okay. But, do we have any room at all, did you recall, for a snow store? I mean, could I get 5 feet?
Sorry, can you, when you speak, just
I'm
be
bad.
closer to the
My
mic,
bad.
because
I'm
the,
sorry.
they're recording it and they can't hear you unless
So
you're.
sorry.
That's all right.
You think we have 5 feet over there? Cause I could totally do that, if you could tell me that.
I think, so the question is the sense that the parking lot is being set by the building, or the building is setting the parking lot on that edge?
I can build a slanted wall if I have to.
No, I don't think any contractor wants to build a slanted wall, so I'm not suggesting that. But I'm just suggesting that if there were less of an ask, like if it was a foot over the setback, because your parking lot has to be a certain size and you need a certain distance from the building next to you, those are starting to build a case for you. But I'm just picking up that there might be a little flexibility. If it doesn't need to be 52 feet, we'd rather you pull the building over 2 feet.
That comes to 7, it goes from 15 to 7. There's Karen. Starts at 15 and
The
is
the
7
setback,
at
yeah,
the bottom.
it's 8 at the bottom
8
left-hand
at the
corner
bottom.
and just about 15 at the back.
Okay,
I mean, it's the building dimension, the way I understand, and stop me if I'm
but-
speaking out of school, is you've got that unit matrix that you're thinking about for your storage units inside the building. So you think in increments.
What about if I move over 5 feet? So I start out at 20 and I end up at 13. Does that make sense? I start right here, at 20 feet, and then down here, it ends up at 13 instead of starting at 15. and ending up at 8.
That seems like a decent compromise. If you can make everything else work, then you're not
And
8
then-
feet from the property
then
line.
Then we would I get 5 feet back here, and then basically I just lose 5 feet to for that distance, and I'm just gonna lose some square footage.
Yeah, I think it's up to you. You could jog the building, if someone's gonna vote to approve the variance
Well,
with that condition.
But we quickly get over the setback, you know, after we
Yeah,
start.
so like,
So it really doesn't
say it's only a
jog really.
foot here, and then you jog it in, and then you don't need to ask for it again. So I think that it's the percentage, so it seems like you have a good chunk of your building over, and there's space somewhere where you can move. So I would leave it up to you if you'd be open, and someone may pose that as a condition if they,
Okay, I would like to propose that we start at this, what's this, northwest corner at the 20-foot setback, side setback. When you get down to the southwest corner, it'd be at 13 feet. So in essence, asking for 2 feet.
Yep.
There on that variance, and then I would move this 5 feet, and I would shift this parking lot 5 feet.
right. I think that's nice, thinking of the future of the neighborhood, and the neighbor next to you may, have more flexibility in their lot with their required setbacks and light and air coming to their property if you're not as close, so.
Okay. It's I think, good idea, and probably eases the burden for the board, and I would be receptive to that. Sir?
If I can jump in, and this is another point, if I'm reading this correctly, the lot coverage would be about 59%.
I heard 59.4, and that's what I recall,
59.4.
yes, sir.
It's supposed to be 50%, so that's, it's significantly above that. That would be one of my concerns as well. So I guess my question would be, have you looked at, is there any reason this can't be scaled down a bit to get to that 50%? Why do we need 59% lot coverage for this
Well,
building?
we're getting ready to go down, now. I'm not sure if that goes to 58 or 57 or whatever, but we're definitely headed that direction. Is there
It's 5 times
is there a
76.
de minimis, amount that the board,
You're already gonna be decreasing it anyway.
yes, sir?
Well, I think, I was gonna jump in, fortunately, we can't really negotiate.
Oh,
I
no,
wish-
I mean, I guess my point is I guess as we've testified, we've laid out the best storage facility we can to serve the market, and I guess to Pat's point, to make it feasible economically and to deal with the few, hardships that maybe he laid out. So,
Well, what I was gonna say is, my suggestion, we go into voting, is I'm gonna suggest we table this, because I would like to give some more thought. I think the board has expressed some concern. That's one of my concerns, is that if there's a real justification for that. And what I would like to see is a little more discussion about that. If you can really show us why we can't keep it at 50, why is that 9% a make or break issue? And if you've looked into any ways to get us closer to that 50%, 50% coverage. There may not be. If you come back and you can really show us, I think we would certainly take that into account.
Yes,
But
sir.
that would be that's something on my mind, just to be, kind of
can
be
understand.
transparent with you. But I think my recommendation would be we table it, and then we, give you a little bit more time and us a little more time to take a look at it.
we'll make the changes we talked about, consider your comments and your suggestions, and get back in here then. If that's what the board and chairman pleases. Yes, sir.
Well, we were just trying to she's much better at math than I am. So, it's gonna be a little under 1,000 square feet that it'll be, so that's gonna bring it, it's about 8,400 square feet. and change.
36,000,
It's-
I guess that brings it down to 58, maybe.
Brings it down, brings it down a little bit.
Yeah.
We do have, you know, it's
The
getting
existing
closer.
is 54, this existing's 54. You know, the building as it exists today, the coverage is 54, and we'd be at 58 with the amendment and the change that we talked about.
And we're actually gaining on some of the setbacks, I mean, that the other building doesn't have. I mean, this is more conforming in most ways, other than, the major thing has been parking, which you're making a case that it's not required really for that type of use.
Yes, sir. Well, I'd certainly be at the pleasure of the board to, you know, continue or if table. I mean, we want to work with this board. We want to work with this city to, you know, get a good project and take the current eyesore off the street and build a beautiful building here and be a good neighbor.
So, is that what we're thinking? Did you want to?
I mean, that's my proposal. I think a lot of time went in by the petitioner. I think we have some legitimate, you know, we've raised some legitimate points. So that would be I would motion to table it a month to see, to give him the chance to look into the stuff we talked about and give us a chance to think about this a little bit more.
Do we have to listen to public comment before we make that decision?
Yeah, usually.
I see a hand. Okay. So
Actually, no, I think that's a good point. I'll withdraw it for now. If there is any public comment, I think it might not be a bad
Okay.
idea to hear of it now. So I'll
I just
withdraw it.
I saw a hand going up in the back. So why don't we, before we make a motion to do anything, we'll open it up to public comment and see, and then go from there. Yeah, thanks. What's that? Anyone in favor? Anyone opposed? Oh, was somebody in favor? I didn't see you, sorry. Of public comment, so it's to speak in favor of it or to oppose it.
Yeah, so Steve Winslow, 83 Jacob Street, Counselor at Large. You know, I come up not so much to oppose the project, but I have not found or heard anything in the community in Ward 6 of people really speaking strongly in favor. You know, we have other storage units that have been more recently built. We have them down on Eastern Avenue, you know, down Eastern and Ferry Street. We have the storage unit on Eastern Avenue that's, you know, behind the Roosevelt's Park. And we have the more recent one, which is now, I think, public storage. And so I guess that's some of what I've heard in the community is that, like, another storage unit. So that's just one thing. I'm not necessarily speaking that much in opposing, but I have not heard a strong outcry in the community. And I do want to say something very strongly to the folks who presented tonight. I've been spending a lot of the time in my 4 years on the council dealing with the fact that our community is becoming less and less affordable to live. And now with COVID, we've, as a city, have very much committed to make sure people are not displaced. And it's one of my frustrations that we're often, you know, this type of thing is happening. We're building storage units, but we're not doing enough to build housing. And so to hear people laughing about people displaced was very upsetting to me, and it would be very upsetting to people in the community. So I just really want to make sure that this is a big issue in our community, and I didn't appreciate that. But besides that, I appreciate the work of the team, the attorneys here and the team. I do see, you know, the setbacks for this type of thing, you know, with some of the comments from the, you know, the folks. You know, they're not that large of variances that are being asked for. I do, having been, you know, the main driver of the bike trail and seeing these units along there, I do generally agree that parking is not a big requirement. I do see that. The parking lots at these facilities are very underutilized, and I mean, I'd rather see open space than pavement, to be honest. So I appreciate you pushing for more open space and not over parking these facilities. A few other things specific. One of the things I have worked on the city council is to pass an ordinance that now allows signage at the back of buildings along the trail here. So one of the things I don't see in the plans is any plan for the backside of the building. And so that's certainly something that, you know, I would ask the proponents to really think about. And Mr. Telenica's comments about access from the bike trail. I mean, I can certainly understand that the typical tenant is not going to be bringing stuff. You're going to get a U-Haul and probably bring stuff up. But gosh, if we don't accommodate that in some way, it's self-fulfilling prophecy. And I know in communities like Somerville, which have been much more popular with bicycling, and as that use is growing, there's actually moving companies that move things by bicycle. So I don't think we should necessarily foreclose that. One of my key concerns is having seen development happen along the trail and having this you know, waiver of a setback is that you can't construct your building right against that line. So I do appreciate the applicant, you know, building in that 5-foot setback. But one of the problems we've had is that the construction companies have been encroaching on the trail during construction. So one of the things I would really insist on is that any, you know, whether it's your board or the planning board, there be a requirement that the applicants enter into an access agreement with the MBTA for construction, because you just can't construct a building that close to a property line without accessing the adjoining property. And because that's a public trail, I mean, we have contractors driving on the trail, blocking the trail, and this is a problem that's happened on the old Papageno site, and I know I work with Nelson Miller, so I think we just need to start including that any building has to get an MBTA license agreement to access if they're gonna be building that close to the trail. I mean, I would appreciate you know, any commitment, as has been in the past, related to making sure that the abutters are helping clean up the trail. I mean, I have seen, you know, this is more maybe of a U-Haul issue than this is a storage issue, but you know, sometimes people with storage, they're throwing some of the stuff they can't take away onto the trail. So I'd appreciate some commitment there. And again, often we're requiring bike racks at any new development, and though maybe someone may not pull up to, you know, with a U-Haul with their stuff, they may bike to this to get their rental agreement. So, and I know U-Haul, you know, has been very accommodating. They have made access. They even connected up the community refrigerator there. So I'm encouraging the thought that we do create some connections between these businesses and the trails. But certainly, you know, like I say, there's the Maplewood community has some bigger issues we'll be tackling than this. But I just, you know, I don't sense a really strong support out there. You know, you do your job here. But I definitely have those kind of comments, and whether your board deals with it or the planning board, I will certainly raise these again. But thank you for that. Thank you, Craig. Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Good evening. Hey, my name is Joel Minnick, and my wife and I own 940 Eastern Ave, which is located here. So we're the western side.
Okay.
And it's a 10,000 square foot single-story industrial property. If you took the walk-through around today, you probably noticed it there, trying to get into the alley and all. We abut the property, of course, to the west. We purchased the place 6 years ago. It was a big deal for us as a couple, and for me, because I run my own business out of the shop. It's called Radical Radiator Restorations, and I sell and restore cast iron radiators for steam and hot water heating systems. By this, and with the lease of the space to my tenant in the back of the building, we've so far survived COVID and covered our mortgage and paid the property taxes and the whole bit. All in all, we've been pretty pleased to make our business home here in Malden for the last 6 years. I understand that discussing the highest and best future use of the Ace Lawn property at 950 is probably not germane to tonight's conversation, but in this board meeting. But that aside, I'm here to request that the variances requested as they stand not be granted. In March of last year, 2020, just right before the pandemic, I was lucky enough to have City Inspector Kelly come by and review some work that we did and sign off, and the switch was flipped on our most expensive and biggest and kind of boldest investment that I've made in my life beyond the building itself, and that was an 80-panel solar array on the roof, which you can actually see from this picture here. So, and that panel array has been awesome for the last year. We have been able to produce over about 140% of our building's electricity. That's for 2 different businesses running all the time. And I run some pretty decent equipment, big surge kind of stuff. That extra 40% as a thing gets kicked out to the community, goes into the grid. So it's either feeding streetlights, for the city of Malden, it's either feeding a neighbor's back porch, it's going to other businesses. It's just clean juice straight from the sky. I have here, well, you've actually got the overhead photo here, so that's perfect. Used in for 950 Eastern Ave, but pardon me, I digress. To the west, you can clearly see the majority of the panels are angled to catch the morning sun, which is how it was designed. So we kind of set this up with the assumption that this building was going to be here for a while, and I understand things change, and that's okay. But on the renderings, are there renderings actually still here from? Actually, this is a good one. This is the aerial view from the southeast, and as you can kind of see, what's evident, I know this is artistic rendering, it's going to be casting this in the shadow. We're going to be sitting in the shade, and that'll be kind of a difficult thing. I understand that by right, the zoning ordinance affords development within certain parameters, but the enormous scale and the height of the building aside, any variance granted to this project, especially to the property line setbacks in particular, will have a diminishing and measurable effect on my property's ability to create electricity and create power. I offer that contrary to the petitioner's claim of imminent substantial hardship, financial and otherwise, that the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance is to extend some equal rights to all property owners in all directions, even the small ones who have to look up at a neighbor, which is what I'll be doing after the building goes up, because I think the set height at present is 46 feet, and then the parapet's going up to 47 feet. So it's going to be substantially higher than where it is currently, but I ask that if our property is left only like the scraps of air and importantly light, that if we're fighting for those kind of scraps of air and light, that we actually get all the scraps that are coming to us, meaning the full 15 feet. If I can't fight the 15 feet, or 13 feet, I feel dubious about what the effects will be on my property. So I hope that as this petition or this application stands, that it will not be approved until maybe myself and the petitioners can either work something out about the solar panel array moving forward and about the setbacks. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate you being here to listen. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Is there I have one question, well, it might lead to more, but can you hear me?
A little bit better.
Can a study be done to show if it was constructed the way it's proposed?
a light study can be done, yeah.
Well, light study can be done. I think that when you look at the scale of the buildings, if my building is a story, it's essentially a story and a half. If it goes up against a full 4-story building, you know, at 46 feet, so we're almost, you know, 11 and change foot floors, that it's inevitable that the shadow and the shade, as somebody stated earlier, the building's oriented essentially north-south. My building and the current A Salon properties are really north-south, so skew that just a bit. And so the sun really comes up on Eastern Ave, you know, comes up over Revere Beach and just shines right down on the photo cells. But so yeah, study or no, it's in the shade. I think it's going to be, nonetheless, it's a large investment with a 20-year return. And that
With 19 years
return
left.
might be truly delayed and inhibited at this point in time. So how to move forward, I'm not sure, but I'm open to all suggestions.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, cheers.
Any more public comment? Okay, so now we're going to close public comment.
What about having them rebut anything if they want? Have petitioner rebut anything that they might want.
Does the petitioner have any comments with regard to the last two
Well,
public comments?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. The concerns of the abutter specifically with request or with respect to possible shadow effects and corresponding effects on electricity generation at his property were frankly not something that was known to or considered by the petitioner, although we're more than willing to work with that individual, see if we can address his concerns. And we're mindful as well of the board's concerns, Member Bilgin's concerns, and Member Sherwin's concerns about trying to perhaps restructure the siting of the building on the lot to minimize, if not completely eliminate, the variance requests related to side yard setback and lot coverage. So petitioner's position at this point, given the comments of the board and the comments of Councilor Winslow and the abutting owner, would be for tabling for 1 month, as previously mentioned by Member Sherwin, for purposes of modifying the plan to the extent possible to address those dimensional issues, and also perhaps discuss in more detail with the abutter and Councilor Winslow the issues related to shadow and the bike path to the rear of the property. As I mentioned, typically those kinds of conditions, in my experience, are more common at the planning board stage, but we're more than happy to address them at the Board of Appeals stage. Either way, it doesn't matter to the petitioner. So we formally request a tabling for a month for purposes of plan revision and to consult with Councilor Winslow and with the abutter and see if we can come back in about 30 days with a somewhat more palatable proposal for the board that addresses these issues.
Thank you. Did you want to make that motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to table it. So I say we table it for a month. I would request that any new plans be filed, I'd say a week before our next meeting.
Excuse me, I had a comment, question before we go to the motion.
Oh, okay.
Is now the opportunity to ask a question, comment?
Yep, you can ask a question. You are number 4, 3? There you are.
Okay, thank you so much. So I mean, just from walking around today, the existing properties, 950, 970, it's right now, it's kind of so in full disclosure, I'm a public associate member, so I'm not voting today, but I do have some comments. walking around today, the existing property is, quite frankly, a dump. It's not upkept, I tried walking down the alleyway, which is on the, I believe, the west side. Very narrow, there's a fence at the back that connects to the Northern Strand Community Trail, so it's inaccessible. On the east side, there was a locked fence, I couldn't get through. So, I mean, quite frankly, my sticking points, I don't have an issue with the parking, granting a variance on the parking. I think less parking, I think the petitioner knows best what parking that they need for their structure, and I also feel that less parking is better in terms of stormwater runoff. We're looking at heat island effect, all that. So, I mean, minimizing parking, I think, is only a good thing. The percent of building coverage, personally, speaking for myself, I don't have an issue with that in the sense that the building's more valuable, so that's more potential tax revenue that the city's getting. More things we can, fund with that tax revenue, like police, fire, teachers. One thing, though, we are trying to do as a city is we are trying to create a walkable, scalable, transit-oriented, pedestrian, and trail-oriented,
Sorry,
Business-
I want to interrupt, sorry, that would be something more for the planning board, not for us.
I'm sorry, what?
That would be something that the planning board would deal with, not the Board of Appeals,
Okay.
what you're getting into.
So, I mean, just to piggyback on what was said, as Councilor Winslow mentioned, I would like to see more in the rear. So I would like to see some kind of signage, some kind of possible benches or trees or green space, but I would also like to see some kind of access from Eastern Ave back to the trail, if that's possible in the design, either on the east or west side. So whether it's, some kind of public access where, granted, the majority of customers are not going to be coming from, majority are probably going to be coming by vehicle, but I think that if somebody walking down the trail or biking down the trail, maybe they saw the signage on the back that, this is a storage facility, they can actually come on the trail and cut through to Easton Ave and possibly inquire about the business, and that might be something that is beneficial. But I'd also like to see somebody on Eastern Ave might have that pedestrian bike access to the trail. I mean, we're trying to create more entrances to the trail, so I think anytime we can create that public way access, I think that's beneficial. Thank you.
Okay, would you like to make the motion?
I'll make the motion again.
Yep, you seconded it. Sorry, you weren't on.
Thank you. Sorry. No, you need to turn me on. Okay, thank you. On motion by Sherwin to table for 1 month, they would like the plans to be brought for review no less than a week before our next meeting, and that would be August 19th is our next meeting. So I would say by August 12th, does that sound right?
Yeah, if I could just jump in.
Well, I shut you off, hang on.
All right. Is a week enough time? I mean, would you guys, I don't want to put you in a deadline you can't meet. I mean, could you get them have them filed a week before? Okay. So that would be my motion.
Okay, so on motion by Sherwin to table for 1 month, second by Sullivan. We'll call the roll. All right, Sullivan? Yes. Sherwin? Yes. King?
Yes.
Bilgan?
Yes.
Kramer?
Yes.
Thank you. On a vote of 5-0, we will table this petition 21008 until August 19th, 2021. Thank you.
Okay, the next petition is petition It's a Wednesday. Nope, August 18th is a Wednesday. August 20th is that Friday. So the 18th. Go ahead. Okay, the next petition is petition 21-009 by Corey Rice of Delusia Property Services LLC on behalf of Hillary Banda. I apologize if I mispronounced those names. For a variance of MCC 12.16.010, Table of Intensity Regulations, Chapter 12 of the Revised Ordinances of 2020 as amended of the City of Malden, namely dwelling, single-family dimensional controls, rear yard setback, as per plans RES 037881, 2021, at the property known as and numbered 72 Bowers Ave, Malden, Mass., and also known by City Assessors Parcel ID 103709942. Oh, I have to turn you on. There you go.
Good evening. My name's Corey Rice. I'm the contractor on the project. We were here a couple of months ago to try for extending the setbacks for the existing deck, and under the suggestion of the board, decided to redo the plans to kind of change what we were originally thinking, and in terms of what we're looking to do now is to build a 3-season sunroom on their existing decks on the back of their house. So their existing deck is 11.5 feet coming off of their house, 26 feet wide. What they're looking to do simply is to use that pre-existing frame and just build a 3-season porch. Both clients are now working at home due to COVID, and need the extra space. They don't have any office space in their house, so they're looking to kind of be alleviated a little bit, and we are looking to get an approval for a variance on enclosing that deck and them being allowed to use it for a 3-season porch.
Thank you.
Sure.
Does anybody have any?
Yeah,
Okay, your number,
I'm on it.
you're on, yep.
All right, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Based on, I don't know if you filled this out, the criteria for variance that was supplied to us. And on it, it says, variance may only be granted when 4 criteria are met, and one of them is soil condition, shape, and topography. And in that section, they say, the soil condition, shape, topography of the land, structure in good shape, condition, and do not affect the zoning district. Apparently that's not met, I think, sounds like. And then we talk a little bit about, in the second one, the people working from home. Do these people work from home?
Yes.
What do they do?
She is an account manager for an engineering company. So she had gone to an office prior to the pandemic starting, and now she's pretty much, they've pivoted most of their clients or employees now to work from home.
And that's permanent?
Yes.
And the, is there a finished attic there?
Is there, excuse me?
Finished attic?
No.
There is an attic, though.
There is, but it's a, you you can't put space up there. There's, the way that the peaks and the gables are run, it would, my belief is that when we tried to look at that type of an addition or converting it, there's some ratio where you need to have a certain amount of head height to be able to put living space up there, an office up there. And the way their attic is kind of configured now, there's no way they would get that. It's mostly just for storage of miscellaneous boxes and things like that.
I hate to give a, like I said to the other people, I hate variances, so it, you know, if there's other ways I can do it. I was looking at, a description of the house from 2013.
Yep.
And they mention about, attic space, that would be bonus that they could make space in. That's why I'm asking that question, if there's another option. Doesn't seem that
No,
there's an issue with the land.
no, so their basement, again, the head height in the basement is less than 7 feet. There's numerous beams that poke down. Originally, I think this was back in February, is we had petitioned for the same project, but the clients wanted to see if we could extend out a couple of feet at that time. And understandably, there was no due hardship extending out further than the existing footprint. So that's when we made the decision to try to reconfigure things, get the plans redrawn, and just exactly have the three-season porch or the sunroom built on the existing frame so that we're not pushing the rear setbacks any further. And aside from the basement and the attic area, their way their house is configured, there's really not a lot of other rooms that could be converted.
And
They have spoken to a couple of neighbors. Their neighbor at 78, I think was included in your packet, was a letter of recommendation saying that they don't see anything detrimental to the neighborhood and actually would kind of fits in with the neighborhood a little bit more. And they also, a local real estate agent had also submitted something in the packet saying that she feels that it's a project that fits in well with the neighborhood and is kind of not detrimental.
just not zoning, that's all. But, yeah, it looks like, I mean, some of the, like, the first condition doesn't seem to be met. The second condition, it seems that there's maybe an alternate, I'm not sure. I mean, we haven't been up in the attic to take a look either or to measure, but I mean, from the picture, it looks like
Yeah, I mean, it's broken up. I mean, I think monetarily too, trying to get space from that attic would definitely be a non-starter for them.
we're looking at what I assume is a temporary item. I don't think my American business is going to be working from home forever.
Some companies have pivoted now, and
Some companies have pivoted, but most of them have not. I mean, and they will be changing. I mean,
true. And that's kind of one of the reasons why we did step it back from initially the 2.5 feet extending out further and trying to kind of just build it on the existing footprint and making sure that the roof line kind of matches up elevation with, they have a little jog on the back of the house now for it's a little closet or whatever, that roof line comes straight across, so it kind of looks like it fits in with the house and doesn't really push out more than it should.
okay, I'm set.
I think I have to turn on your mic.
Am I correct, this doesn't increase the violation of the rear setback, correct?
Not at all. We're building on the existing, so if you look at the plot plan that's in there, the 11.5 feet that comes out from the house, we're not going past that more than 1 inch. It's gonna stay at the 11.5 feet coming back from the rear house. So The two dimensions back there of 16 feet off the rear setback line, it kind of runs at an angle. And the 17.2, those are hard, those aren't going to be encroached upon any further. So those are staying. And same thing with the 26 feet long, it's literally just going to be built upon the existing deck that's there now.
Although I'm going to agree with my colleague to the right relative to the first finding required to grant the variance, and that regarding the soil conditions, shape, and topography. And I don't know that that first answer correctly addresses the requirements of the finding, if I'm expressing myself, correctly in a way that can be understood. But what is it about the soil condition, shape, and/or topography which especially affects the land that this structure is on, but doesn't generally affect the neighboring properties?
Well, we just found that with the way the deck was built currently, that the structure makes sense to be built where it is in terms of not being put somewhere else. So I think what we were trying to say is that the petition for that clause was if we could build the sunroom on existing without pushing out further, then we don't disturb or ruin or come into contact with any of the soil conditions that might change that.
Okay. Again, I'm not certain that addresses the point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I think just to follow up on that same question, I think that's a hard question to answer for most homeowners. Is there a retaining wall in the back of the property?
No.
No, so it's completely flat, kind of joining other
Yeah,
properties?
so if you're looking at their house, if you're on their deck looking at the rear setbacks, they have their little existing side closet here. That drops down about 1.5 feet. There's a little 2-course cinder block retaining wall there, but everything else slopes back rear towards the rear lot lines.
Another question related to the shape of the site or the size of the site. I'm just wondering if roughly that same space and dimension could be fit on the side of the house, or if that would also encroach on a side yard setback. It seems like it would take over the driveway, which would be a problem, but it looks like it also would encroach on that side yard setback.
Yeah, exactly. So the driveway on the left, if you're looking at the plans, on the left-hand side there, where it looks like the stairs are coming off the existing deck.
Yeah.
That's all driveway right there. And if I don't have that dimension on top of me, but if they can only fit single cars in the driveway, tandem front and back. So it's only probably about 10 or 12 feet wide there.
Yeah.
And they do need the off-street parking.
They
for
probably are gonna keep their cars even if they
Yeah.
don't have to commute to work.
Be kind of harder to give up 2
Yeah.
cars than on the
And
rear.
John, some departments are working at home, like indefinitely, so I just wanted to put that out there. And the whole attic conversion, I consider that all the time. It is very costly. Most attics are not up to code for structure and other things, stairs. So it's a huge endeavor to finish an attic to code. So I can understand if that doesn't seem like a possible option.
Yeah, it'd be very invasive and.
That I cannot answer, but those were my questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello? One thing I'm noticing is that house, as you come down Bowers, it like gets pinched a little bit, so almost, and I don't have the square footages of the lots in front of me, but it almost looks like 72 Bowers has a smaller lot than the neighbors on both sides because of the way, so there's Bowers and Plymouth runs parallel on the other side, and it like,
It kind of funnels back that way
yeah.
and
Can you see- I don't know
trapezoids.
if you can see that, Bill. How many square feet is it? So I don't know what the other ones are, but it does get pinched right there, it looks like. And- Yeah. 4? You're 4?
I think that's a good point. I think isn't the zoning requirement for single-family, like new build is 7,500? So the lot is in size smaller than most typical. So I think it's worth considering if you did notice that trend in just that specific area, that it is smaller, that does make it hard to add on.
And like I said, I can't see the square footage of the neighboring lots, but looking from the aerial,
My question is am I on?
no, hang on. There you go.
That would be my question, it's just that, is it significantly different than the neighboring properties, or the neighboring lots?
So, I mean,
They appear to be somewhat the same size. I do see the funneling you're referring to. But they appear to be similar in size and shape to me.
it does pinch, because when you're coming down Bowers, it turns sharply and then heads down here, so that the neighboring lot, the space right here where you're looking at the 74 feet lot line, kind of on the left-hand side of the driveway, you only have about a foot of that past their driveway, and then that's all their neighbor's house. So that, their lot's very weirdly shaped. It actually comes out and flares out trapezoidally this way towards the front too. So, I mean, they're in a tight spot there. They're semi-limited to what they can do. They thought this was in their best interest in terms of being able to afford it, and also something that fits in and isn't too invasive, such as an attic conversion or, and again, the big thing is trying to get it built on the existing foundation to not encroach any further on those two rear setbacks of 16 feet and 17.2. So we're really, I mean, I understand the setbacks there to kind of protect the neighbors and make everything feel and fit right, but it's going to be built on existing. It's 4 feet and 3.8 feet. We're, like I said, we're not encroaching an inch on either of those two fixed dimensions there, and it kind of felt like it made sense, and this was the easiest, most affordable, and kind of least invasive option for them to help them out.
Any other questions? Is there a question? Okay. Wait.
Okay. I took a walk back there today, and I walked around I went into the backyard and the property. So from my understanding, the sunroom is going to be basically the exact dimensions of that deck that's there now?
Exact dimensions, it's literally gonna come up on all three sides, straight up from where the sides are on the existing framework.
Right. And then the deck foundation that's in the ground, is that going to be the foundation for the sunroom?
Yep.
Okay, so the deck just gets...
Nothing will be disturbed underneath. We don't have to do any further disturbance of what's there. Literally, that would be the base foundation, quote unquote, or the base frame of the sunroom, and build up on top of that. And then, if you were there, if you look at the back of the house, you saw on the left-hand side, there's that little jog out. The same roof, little shed roof that comes off of that, that's gonna be the same roof line of the sunroom that comes off and carries to the side of the house on the right-hand side.
And the entrance to the sunroom would be where
On the driveway side.
On the driveway side where the steps are right now?
Yep.
Okay. all right.
So, yeah, there wouldn't be another set of stairs on the rear side or the right-hand side. Where the stairs are now is gonna be their entry point.
Okay, that was my only question. I was there today, so I was just trying to visualize how it would look, so I think I have a little bit of an idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we want to, is there anybody here for public comment? Okay. So we'll open it up to public comment. There's only one of you, so I guess it doesn't matter at this point if it's for or against it. But come on up.
I'm the neighbor to the rear.
Okay.
I just wanted to say it looks like a great idea. It's good for the neighborhood, make the house just that much nicer, and I'd like to see it happen.
Great. Are you the one, I'm just looking at the aerial, do you have that giant yard right next
I'm
to
the
it?
Plymouth Road neighbor behind.
Okay, yeah, so they have, so you also have frontage on Bowers, or are you on the other side?
I'm sorry, I did not hear you clearly.
What number in Plymouth are you?
I'm 124 Plymouth.
Oh, okay, gotcha, okay. Oh, and what's your name?
Tom Goldsmith.
Tom Goldsmith. Thank you.
Yep.
So, right now, we're gonna close it to public comment. Oh, so we also have two letters. The first letter, is from Tasha and Clint Buklowski, 78 Bowers Ave. Dear Zoning Board of Appeals, please accept this email as our full support for Hillary and Chris Bonda's sunroom project. This project fits within the aesthetic of our neighborhood, and we are in favor of the project. Is it Bonda?
Bandus.
Bandus.
Yeah.
The Bandus are wonderful neighbors, and we appreciate the attention to detail to their property and enjoy being in close proximity to them, sharing a chain link fence that permits many daily interactions and conversations. We have absolutely no reservations about the project and look forward to its completion. Warm regards, Tasha and Clint Buklowski, 78 Bowers Ave. And the next letter is from Kristen Janetti. To whom it may concern, I am writing in full support of the proposed new sunroom at 72 Bowers Ave. I feel this project fits in line with the neighborhood feel and would be aesthetically pleasing. Home is now more important than ever during this COVID times, and the homeowner should be allowed to continue with this project. Kindly contact me with any questions or concerns that you may have. So with that, we're going to close public comment. Is there anything that the board would, anything you want to discuss? Nelson, do you have any comments? Does anybody want to make a motion? Nobody? John's about to say something. Six, are you 5? Okay.
I mean, my problem is we're given this, or their reasoning for it are sort of temporary for a permanent structure. I'm a little unsure on whether that's an adequate reason to be granting a variance, in a house. It's almost 1,800 square feet of finished space that back, I haven't looked at the current thing, what the assessor says it is, but, to find, again, we're not looking at a huge amount of space that's necessary to put in an office, if we go with the reasoning that they say they need this space. I mean, you know, an office is, you know, for home use can be very small. I mean, they, you know, in the article, and actually I am aware that people do work at home, and that they do make do with the space that they do have. I mean, again, you know, granting a variance for what could be a temporary reason, I don't think is an adequate reason to do it. I mean, we're still looking at what there is a, you know, a deck there now, which was just rebuilt. Wouldn't have been allowed other than there is a deck there. I mean, was a deck there. But we're making, again, we've had some people talk about green space and the need for it, and now we're making, you know, less of it in a neighborhood on what is not quite half the size of a lot that would be required for a single-family house now. And would be bringing it at the house up to over 2,000 square feet, I guess, without doing the math.
Just for, this is a 3-season,
Correct.
so I don't think you would include that living area in
Yeah, I
the
know,
living area.
I worry about 3-season porches.
What's that?
I worry about 3-season porches, though.
And that was a question I had too, so are they using this for the,
3-season.
oh, okay.
So her office would only be there.
That's not
For
where
the
her
summer
office is gonna
months.
be.
Well, it's 3-season in terms of there wouldn't be heat out there, but she would be using it
Would you-
primarily for spring, summer, fall, shoulder seasons, depending on how cold it gets out there. She might put a plug-in heater, but there's no hardwired heat or anything that's gonna be tied into the house.
So there would not be heat out there.
Correct. 3-season / sunroom, no heat.
So she only works 3 months, 6 months out of the year, 9 months out of the year,
No,
depending
no.
on the temperature?
Like I said, she would be out there for spring, summer, and fall. It's temperate windows and whatnot. And then shoulder seasons, like a lot of people actually do. Like I said, I'm a contractor, so I mean, people do it in their basements now currently that don't have heat. A small little plug-in ceramic heater or something like that.
All right. Nobody wants to make a motion? I'd make a motion. I mean, based on what I've heard tonight, again, that it's not going to be, it's supposedly needed for an office space due to COVID, but it's not going to be used year-round, so then it's a temporary office. The lot's too small. There's no condition with the lot particularly that doesn't allow them to find other space that's to use for an office. Our job isn't to get a variance because it's cheaper for the homeowner necessarily, but if there's some kind of a hardship, and I think that it's possible that they would be able to find the space in the house. So I would make a motion after all that, not to allow the petition. Do not.
I'll second the motion.
You want to turn me on?
So Adam's on
Like 6.
6. You're 6. Who do you need on? You're on.
I'm on? Okay.
Yep.
Motion by King, second by Sullivan to deny permit 21009. Take a vote. Okay, Sullivan? To deny?
Yes.
Okay. Sherlin? No. King?
Yes.
Bilgan? Kramer?
No.
All right, so in order to pass, we would have had a 4 out of 5. So motion is not granted, not passed.
Okay.
That's the time.
Can I ask one more question? Is the space going to be used as the home office, or are they just creating, they want to create more space that they can use because some of their house is being used as a home office?
It's kind of flex space, so the initial intent was, when she's been working at home, again, we looked at the office, the attic space, budget-wise, just the way it was designed, totally infeasible. She, like I said, she has 2 monitors, she's on Zoom meetings all day, so she does need a decent amount of real estate area to do this. So their initial idea was to convert the rear deck into office space. And it would be designated office space, but flex space at the same time. So she would have in one of the corners set up her whole station with electrical and her kind of work home desk. And then, like I said, use on the shoulder season some sort of a temporary heating source out there with nothing. It's hot water baseboard now, so nothing tied into the main hot water baseboard system. So it is a home office with flexible space at the same time, but that's their general intent. We've got 2 bedrooms upstairs. It's small upstairs. If you look at the plans kind of for the house itself, it is 1,800 square feet. It's chalked up very, very well. Stairs, 2 small bedrooms upstairs with a bathroom. Downstairs is a living room in the front, dining room, kitchen, and then pretty much a small closet, and then stairs going down to their basement. There isn't really much. It's a decent-sized house, but the way it's laid out and broken up like a lot of these old houses in Malden are, it's just, there's no designated, like a 3rd bedroom, a designated room where the nursery, they don't have kids, but the nursery could be switched into a home office pretty easy, make that pivot. This is kind of pigeonholing them into what they can afford and almost kind of make common sense to us, just being able to, like I said, our big thing was now, after redesigning everything and redoing it, keeping those hard setbacks at the back of the lot line and trying to utilize what they can work with.
Okay, thanks.
I thought I heard plug-in heater. I mean, again. I know that I know that the fire department doesn't like plug-in heaters as a main source in a room. I mean, there's too many issues that they have with those. And again, we're coming back to, it's not 3 season, it's more gonna be year-round.
Technically not, I mean, it is 3 season, I mean, to speak to your comments, I mean, the plug-in heaters that kind of are produced now, they have anti-tip features, all sorts of shut-offs on them, I mean, they are, I'm sure the police chief can, the fire chief can speak to that, but, I mean, they are a lot safer than, say, those old raw kind of element ones that.
Safer than fireplaces, but I mean, still, I mean, it's,
Better than a old kerosene.
but.
I have no idea what kind of heat they're gonna put in there. How can I speak to that?
Well, any heat that's in there, because it's not gonna be connected to the heating system, will be temporary.
Portable, right?
We already voted on it.
But it didn't pass.
It didn't pass.
Yeah, so I mean, what else is there to vote on?
No,
Maybe I can change
the
someone's
motion
mind?
didn't pass.
Yeah.
No, can I not?
I guess you can, I mean, we already have 2 people opposing it, so, I mean, I guess if you want to make an affirmative motion, but I'm assuming the same 2 people are gonna vote this thing.
If I can, I may as well try. Maybe I can
Yeah.
change someone's mind?
To the chair though, can I make a comment on whether I'm supportive or not supportive of this?
No,
I can't?
no. You're not a voting member, right, tonight.
I understand I'm not a voting member, but
Yeah.
I thought it was my understanding I'm allowed to say whether I'm supportive or not supportive of the petition.
I mean, you're not really supposed to. You can ask questions to get more information. But yeah, it can be
To
confusing.
convince me otherwise. I mean, if you can find a reason that rebuts.
If you feel that there's an
Feelings.
unanswered question,
Okay.
you can ask it, but you're not voting tonight, so it just
understand that.
could be confusing to people.
Right, but I'm not allowed to say, like, I'm supportive of this because I think it would be a betterment to the property, or?
It doesn't make a difference,
What doesn't make a difference?
because you're not voting anyway.
No, I understand that, but
Okay.
maybe my comment might,
But we don't vote on betterments, we vote on
right.
law.
Okay.
I might speak one last time, just to kind of, or address the point of hardship or whatnot. Both my clients have.
I shut it off, so hang on a second. All right, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to kind of address the hardship point. Like, both my clients have long-term or long-standing Melrose residents, and in terms of, we did look at every single angle to try to get them the space they're looking for. And of course, me as a contractor, I'd love to blow off their roof if that was adequate, if we could do it according to the plans and give them a huge second floor or third floor addition and proper. I mean, that would be a really nice fit, but it just wasn't in the cards for them. And they're trying to do the best with what they can, dealing kind of with the new work at home, as most people are, and whether it be temporary or permanently, depends on which category the employee falls into. But in terms of what we're trying to do, we did look at it from every angle as possibly we could, and something that does fit in with the neighborhood, as the couple of letters of recommendation, and directly their neighbor from behind them came up here to attest to as well. There doesn't seem to be a lot of, or any rebuttal from any of the neighbors, and in fact, most of them are in favor of it, so they're just trying to kind of do something that fits in and everybody seems to be kind of on board with. That's all.
Thank you.
Sure.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the petition, and I just wanted to comment on number 1 and say that I do feel that even if adjacent properties are similar in size, but they're all not really related to the generally zoning district regulations, and that they're all much smaller, significantly smaller than what is typical when considering the zoning setbacks. So I do feel that item number 1, that the shape and the size of the lot does, it does give circumstance for a variance in my mind. I also think that there is a financial hardship when considering to renovate an older home. The attic is a very expensive endeavor. Dormers or just structuring the floor of that level, it's typically not able to accommodate weight of a finished space. So I'd like to make the motion to approve.
Anyone want a second?
All right.
No. Can I second? What? I don't second, right?
It failed, it doesn't have a second.
Yeah.
So that motion failed.
Yeah.
No one seconded.
Two failed motion.
Petition's done. Can't pass.
So, Adam didn't like the first motion or the second motion, so do you have a motion that you'd like to?
No, it's over. I think we denied it the first time. I think that's kind of it.
You didn't, though.
What's that?
You voted no.
I voted in favor of it the first time.
Oh,
I don't think you
There were
did.
two people voted against it,
Right.
right?
No, two people voted for it.
What's that?
No,
You
two
vote
people
to
voted
deny
for
it.
it,
Two
You have to
people
be
voted
for it.
against,
to deny it. Two people don't voted to deny
yeah, so that's
the
it.
petition.
We don't have, we need a supermajority. So,
You have to have 4 out of 5.
so I think the first vote was really carried it. I don't think there was really the second one.
I see what you're saying.
But was it, can I speak? Or is that?
What's that?
It's done. I mean,
I think the confusion is sometimes we vote, someone makes a motion to approve it, someone makes a motion to deny it, but it's really the same thing. And if two people are not in favor of the request, then the
Right.
story's over. So that's how I see it. I think it was denied the first time. I know there was a second motion, but I mean, my mind is, we already voted on it the first time, so.
So the petition is not granted.
Yeah. What's that? Yeah, we have to have a supermajority. Do I get a chance to speak on that?
I think at this point, it's over, it's denied. I'm sorry for the confusion.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, is that the board member there was trying to convince somebody, so I would assume that.
So basically what happened was, we need a supermajority, so we need a 4 to 1. And we got,
Was trying to see if, with what she had said as a point, was trying to convince the two other judges, but they don't, we don't get to hear whether they convinced, that she got convinced, or whether they swayed their vote from the first time.
so she made a motion and nobody seconded it.
if she had swayed me, I would have seconded it. Or said him. So, I mean, you heard, that was, nobody seconded it.
Yes, that's it. Sorry.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
That's all?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn by Sullivan, second by King. Sullivan?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
King?
Yes.
Wilkins?
yes.
Kramer?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion to adjourn at 8:38 PM.
You know that Citizens Planning Group?
Yes.
You familiar with that?
Yeah.
They have consultants that come, meet with us and kind
Yeah.
of review everything.
Yeah.
And it might not be, maybe we should reach out to them, because
Yeah.
I have a lot of questions kind of how we're doing things too.
Yeah,
I mean, it might be a good idea to get them to, do something at some point, maybe visit with us and do a training.
Yeah. I was definitely confused with that.
No, there are a lot of things that I'm confused about too, but I'm curious what it makes sense.
Yeah, I've taken their courses, they are very good.
They are very good, yeah.
I took a couple with Jim.
Yeah.
I just realized their emails are going to my junk mail.
You know, the
Even
funny
like,
thing is,
is it okay to
going
talk
to
about
my
the first?
spam, and
What's
I
that?
take
Is it okay to talk about the
courses
first
and
case
sign
tab?
in on the
Yeah,
friendly
so-
website.
Even without one, something like
You need this.
Oh, yeah.
to me, that first finding was,
Yeah.
the topography, the soil, the shape, nothing was any different across that entire area of East Ave.
Yeah.
So So, you have to meet all three, correct?
Yeah.
Or four, is it?
Four,
Yeah.